This girl was accused of betrayal by her own family and cast out of her home at the age of 16. No one stood by her, but years later, she returned, carrying a truth that would force them all to bow their heads in shame. And the most shocking part? The real traitor was the one closest to her. In the quiet town of Ashfield, Oregon, life moved at the unhurried pace of rustling leaves and creaking porch swings. The people there knew each other by name, and every window seemed to hold a story that had already been told 1,000 times. For Anya Thompson, childhood felt like it had been painted in calm tones. Cool mornings, books read under apple trees, and the hum of her father's radio drifting through the wooden walls of their old house. Anya was not like the other girls in town. While they chased the fleeting glamour of school dances and whispered crushes, she spent her afternoons dismantling broken clocks from flea markets and reprogramming old calculators. At the age of 12, she had already taught herself to code in 2 languages. It was not brilliance that set her apart. It was hunger, an insatiable curiosity, a need to understand how things worked, and perhaps why people did not always work the same way. Her father, Thomas Thompson, saw this spark before anyone else did. A quiet man with oil-stained fingers and a voice that rarely rose above conversation, he recognized something of himself in her, a deep patience, a comfort in solitude, and an unspoken need for order. He encouraged her pursuits with simple gestures, a discarded motherboard from work, a second-hand computer they restored together, or just silence when she needed space to think. One evening, as golden light fell through the window blinds, he called her into the garage where he kept a box of old keepsakes. "I want you to have this," he said, holding out a brass pocket watch. It was aged but beautifully kept, the kind that once rested in the waistcoat of someone who read newspapers by candlelight. He placed it in her palm with reverence. "Why?" she asked, turning it over carefully. "Because time," he said, "always holds the truth. When everything else slips through your hands, words, memories, people, time keeps record. Learn to trust it." She carried those words with her like armor. The pocket watch rarely left her side, tucked into the small inside pocket of her school bag, hidden from view but never far from thought. Anya's older brother, Ethan, watched these quiet exchanges with a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. At 17, he was already the golden boy of Ashfield High, captain of the debate team, a straight-A student, and the kind of son who made mothers sigh with envy. But when their father leaned over Anya's shoulder to study the line of code she had just written, Ethan would often stiffen. He never said a word, never raised his voice. But his silence grew colder with time. At dinner, when their father praised Anya's ingenuity, how she had fixed the microwave by bypassing a faulty capacitor, Ethan would counter with news of his college acceptances or upcoming leadership retreats. It was not overt, not yet, but a quiet storm brewed behind his eyes, one that no one noticed, no one except Anya. Even then, even in the softness of childhood, something in her understood. Love, no matter how gentle, could make shadows out of those left untouched by it. And Ethan, always so perfect, was beginning to feel forgotten. It happened in early spring, when the trees were just beginning to stretch their limbs after a long winter, and the smell of wet earth lingered in every breath. Anya was 16, her hair longer now, her presence quieter. Calmer, some said, more withdrawn. She had grown used to spending evenings in the garage, headphones on, eyes scanning lines of code, while the rest of the house hummed with domestic rhythm. The morning the news broke, she was in her room, tracing a fault in a network simulation for her weekend project. Downstairs, the television was on louder than usual. Her mother's voice, sharp with confusion, cut through the floorboards. The breach at Cinertech, her father's company, was unprecedented. Confidential files had been leaked, investor trust plummeted overnight, and the board had called for an internal investigation. Whispers of sabotage floated like smoke. By the end of the day, the company's cybersecurity team had uncovered an unauthorized access point. The logs pointed, inexplicably, to a personal device, one registered under Anya's name. She remembered her father's footsteps on the stairs that evening. They were not angry, they were hesitant, heavy. "I need to see your laptop," he said. Just that. No explanation. She handed it over, unsure, her heartbeat faltering for the first time. An hour later, her mother stood in the doorway of her room, face pale and blank like washed-out glass. "There are files on your system, Anya, internal documents, passwords." "That's not possible," Anya replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Dad, you know I would never." But her father's eyes did not meet hers. They stared at the floor, searching for answers in the grain of the wood. Then Ethan spoke. "She's always been curious. Maybe she just went too far. Anya could have done it." Those words slid through the room like a blade, quiet but deadly. She turned to him, blinking. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Something inside her, the last thin line of belief in him, snapped. The police came the next morning. She watched from the porch as officers searched her devices, bagging her laptop, her hard drives, even a USB she had not used in years. Neighbors gathered across the street, arms folded, whispering with wide eyes and thin lips. Her father stood silently behind them, hands clenched into fists he did not raise. Her mother wept into a dish towel, shoulders shaking. Ethan was not there. He was never there when it mattered. They did not take her to jail. The evidence, though damning, was incomplete, circumstantial. She had no motive, no prior offenses, no confession. But the damage was done. "You can't stay here," her father said, voice low and broken. "Not until we know everything." She waited for her mother to protest, for Ethan to speak, for someone to believe her. No one did. Later that evening, Anya packed a single duffel bag. She reached into her drawer and took the pocket watch, now cold and heavy in her hand. Time always holds the truth. But the truth had not saved her. As the sun slipped beneath the tree line, she walked away from the only home she had ever known. Her footsteps were quiet. No one called her name. The bus pulled away from Ashfield before the sky had fully lightened, leaving behind the outline of pine trees and the fading warmth of a life that no longer belonged to her. Anya sat alone in the back, her duffel bag at her feet, the pocket watch curled tightly in her hand, as if it might dissolve without her grip. She did not cry. The tears had dried up the night before, somewhere between the echo of her brother's words and the silence of her father's refusal to meet her eyes. She did not know where she was going, only that it had to be somewhere else. The first city she arrived in was Eugene, humming with the early buzz of college campuses and overworked baristas. Anya rented a bed in a narrow hostel room that smelled of mildew and old coffee. The sheets were thin, and the walls even thinner, but it was a place to sleep. During the day, she walked miles and miles, following help-wanted signs taped to windows and telephone poles. She found her first job wiping tables at a 24-hour diner off a freeway ramp. The manager barely looked up from his clipboard when he hired her. "You clean, you show up, that's all I care about." She scrubbed grease from booths, took trash out into rain-soaked alleys, and burned her hands more than once on overheated dishware. No one asked her name. No one cared about what she had left behind. Weeks blurred. She moved again, Portland this time. Bigger, louder, colder. The hostel here was worse. The room shared with 5 strangers who came and went without introductions. One of them, a tall girl named Frankie with chipped nail polish and a voice like gravel, offered her a smile on her second day there. "You knew? I know a guy looking for help at a warehouse, under the table, fast cash." Anya hesitated, but rent was due. Her shoes had holes. The watch was the only thing of value she had, and she could not bear the thought of parting with it. She took the job. It lasted 10 days. On the 11th night, after a long shift moving pallets in the rain, she returned to her bed to find her bag slashed open, her money gone, every last bill she had stashed away. Frankie was gone too. No note, no farewell, just the cold sting of betrayal settling beneath her skin like frost. Anya stood in the dim light of the hallway, staring at the wreckage of what little she owned, and for the first time since leaving Ashfield, she sat down on the floor and let herself unravel. Not in sobs, but in silence. Eyes wide, heart hollow, the grief pressing against her ribs like a second heartbeat. The world, she realized, did not care if you were innocent. It did not care if you were young or scared or trying. It only taught lessons, and this was her first. Never mistake kindness for safety. The pocket watch was still there, tucked beneath her jacket. She took it out and wound it once, just to hear the faint tick echo in the hollow room. Then she rose, packed what was left, and moved on again. The night she lost everything was colder than the air suggested. Anya sat curled on a bench outside a 24-hour diner in Sacramento, her duffel bag now lighter by the weight of every dollar she had saved. The girl she had trusted, a roommate from a cheap hostel, all warm laughter and shared ramen, had vanished with her wallet, her backup drive, and a part of whatever fragile trust Anya had left in people. She did not cry. There was no time for grief, only motion. She spent the next day walking. She needed work, any work. Her shoes had thinned at the soles, and the laces were fraying like nerves stretched too long. It was in downtown Oakland, tucked between a hardware store and a laundromat, that she saw the place. A cafe that looked more like a startup's basement than a place to buy coffee. The sign read, Hexabean. Inside, there were no waitresses in aprons, just baristas who talked about firewalls between espresso pulls and customers who typed faster than they spoke. She stood at the door watching them. There was something here she could not name yet. A pulse. A world that hummed in frequencies she had missed for years. The manager, a woman with cobalt-dyed hair and a quiet way of speaking, gave Anya a job cleaning tables and running backup inventory. It was not much, but it was enough to keep her moving. She swept floors in silence, listening to conversations about zero-day vulnerabilities, honeypots, and brute force attacks. She did not understand all of it, but she wanted to. One night after closing, she found an unplugged terminal in the back corner. She asked if she could use it. The manager shrugged. If you do not break anything. She did not. Instead, she searched. She read. She fell down rabbit holes of encryption algorithms and cybersecurity case studies. The language of firewalls, data trails, and silent digital footprints unfolded before her like a second skin she had always been meant to wear. Every article she read felt like uncovering a fragment of the world that had once destroyed her, and now, slowly, was teaching her how to survive. Weeks passed like chapters. She enrolled in free online courses, then paid ones using small earnings, saved carefully this time. She stayed late to study, eyes burning from screen glow, but mind sharper than ever before. It was one of those nights when she met Roy. He was a regular, always in the same corner seat, sipping black coffee and muttering to himself over layers of code. His laptop was covered in worn-out stickers, some digital security firms, others from long-dead hacker collectives. He noticed her watching. "You are not wiping the same counter for 3 hours because you love cleanliness," he said without looking up. Anya froze. He finally glanced at her. "You are reading the logs on that White Hat forum, right? That thing on Terminal 3? She hesitated, then nodded. Roy was older, white-haired, sharp-eyed, and carried himself like someone who had seen too much and said too little. Over time, he asked questions. She answered cautiously at first, then with growing confidence. He started leaving Post-it notes with suggestions, problems to solve, encryption puzzles. Eventually, he told her who he had been. A digital forensics consultant for a federal contractor, long retired, disillusioned with systems and the people behind them. "You are not just curious," he told her one night. "You are looking for something." "Maybe," she said, "or maybe I am running from something." He studied her for a long moment. "You are not running," he said finally. "You are surviving. That is different, and much harder." He never asked her what had happened, not directly. But when she told him, haltingly, about the accusation, about her family, about Ethan, he did not question her. "I believe you," was all he said. It was the first time she had heard those words in years. They did not fix her, but they planted something. Small, fragile, but real. A seed. The seasons slipped past without ceremony, 3 long years marked not by birthdays or holidays, but by lines of code, solved puzzles, and the quiet rhythm of survival. Anya's life became a mosaic of secondhand textbooks, late-night coffee, and the sharp focus of someone trying to rebuild the truth from broken fragments. By then, she had earned certifications that most in her field spent years chasing. She had worked on freelance cases under Roy's silent endorsement, and her name was beginning to surface in small forums, where digital shadows met justice in silent corners of the internet. But the past never stopped humming beneath it all. In every line of corrupted data she cleaned, every firewall she breached, there was a singular ache beneath the task, the unanswered question of who had framed her. She had always known it was someone close, someone who knew how to hide. When she stumbled upon the archived project directory from her father's company, a forgotten server snapshot from the week of the breach, it felt like a crack of light through long, closed doors. Within the metadata were digital fingerprints she had not seen before, ones that pointed not to her but to another employee. Leonard Black, a senior systems manager who had worked with her father for years. His access history was riddled with suspicious anomalies, logins during odd hours, encrypted outbound traffic, even a hidden script embedded in the system's cache. Everything about it felt wrong, felt right. Roy warned her to wait. "You are angry," he said. "Anger is not evidence." But Anya had waited long enough. She compiled a full report, cross-referenced timestamps, traced packet trails, and presented it to a well-known cybersecurity firm that had recently expressed interest in hiring her. It was her moment, a step into legitimacy, into power, and into vindication. Instead, it collapsed. Leonard Black had been investigated and cleared years ago. The anomalies she found were tied to a parallel testing server he had been authorized to use during an internal audit. The scripts were sandbox tools. Her evidence, though compelling at first glance, unraveled under deeper scrutiny. The firm withdrew their offer within 48 hours. The email was cold, formal, polite. "We commend your passion, but accuracy and due diligence are paramount in this field. We wish you the best in your continued growth." She stared at the screen until the words blurred. Later, she sat across from Roy in the cafe, the weight of her failure heavy in her chest. He said nothing for a long while. "I wanted it to be him," she whispered. "I wanted the pieces to fit. I needed them to." Roy stirred his coffee slowly, eyes fixed on the rising steam. Wanting something to be true is the oldest trap in this world. "I am not cut out for this," she said, barely audible. "That is not true," he replied. "You just hit the part of the story where the hero gets everything wrong." She did not respond. She packed up her laptop that night with slower hands. The walk home felt longer. The pocket watch in her coat felt heavier than usual. For the first time in years, she wondered if she was chasing a ghost, if the truth, after all, had buried itself so deep it was never meant to be found. The days that followed moved like smoke, shapeless, drifting, impossible to hold. Anya stopped checking job boards. She stopped answering emails. Even Roy's quiet nudges met only silence. There was a dullness inside her, not quite despair, but something colder. Resignation. She had come so close to something that felt like justice, only to find it built on nothing. She spent her hours in the back of the cafe, not working, just staring. At code, at old files, at the same directories she had combed through 100 times. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat she no longer believed in. It was almost by accident. She was reviewing an old image file, one of the corrupted backups from the original breach, something she had dismissed long ago as unrecoverable. But now, staring at it with a tired mind and nothing left to lose, she noticed something different, a discrepancy in the timestamp, a mismatch in the checksum. She began to dig. The image unfolded like a grave being exhumed. Hidden beneath layers of system noise and scrambled data was a fragment, no more than a few lines of code. But those lines were clean, structured in a way that did not belong to the system's architecture. It was handwritten, deliberate. She leaned closer. She knew that style. The functions were named with a rhythm, the indentations precise, the variables oddly poetic, one of them called mirror zero, another tempest key. Words that had meant nothing before, but now they rang with memory. Ethan. He used to name his dummy files with Latin phrases when he was showing off. Looks elegant, he had once told her, grinning like a boy who thought elegance was everything. She froze. The code was unmistakably his, not just in syntax, but in personality. Concealed, arrogant, elegant. She traced the device ID embedded in the access log. It matched an old tablet she had seen him use, back when their family still shared passwords, back when she had never dreamed he could use her as a shield. Her heart did not race, it slowed. Everything she had pushed away now came rushing back with eerie calm. The way he had not met her eyes the day the police came, the calculated softness in his voice when he had said, Anya could have done it. Not accusation, permission. She sat still for a long time, the glow of the screen reflected in her eyes. The betrayal was not in the logic, it was in the silence, in the decision he had made and never confessed, in the years he had watched her vanish and said nothing. When Roy found her still in the same seat the next morning, she showed him the code. He read it without a word, nodding once slowly. I see it, he murmured. It was him, she said. Her voice held no triumph, just the truth, finally spoken. It was Ethan. Roy looked at her, his expression unreadable. Now you know. She did not cry. Not then. The grief was too deep for tears, a quiet breaking that felt more like stone splitting under frost. She closed the file, saved it, backed it up, then sat back in her chair, one hand resting over the pocket watch at her chest. Time had kept its promise, and now the truth had found its way home. She did not return with noise. There were no headlines, no declarations, no confrontations staged beneath blinking cameras. When Anya stepped off the bus onto the cracked pavement of Ashfield's downtown station, the morning air was thick with fog and the scent of cedar. She wore a plain coat, a scarf pulled close, her hair tied back the way she used to wear it before the world burned. Nothing about her announced who she was or what she carried, but the truth traveled with her. Encrypted files, mirrored drives, expert statements, logs, and the single fragment of code that had taken everything and now gave it all back. She checked into a small motel on the edge of town, overlooking the same road she used to bike down as a child. That night, in the stillness of the room, she wrote the letter by hand. It was not long. Truth speaks for itself. Be ready to listen. Anya. She mailed one copy to her parents' house. Another she slid under the door of Ethan's law office, the same polished glass front building he had once bragged would be his legacy. By the end of the week, subpoenas followed. The digital forensics firm Roy had contacted on her behalf filed a formal request to reopen the investigation with newly discovered evidence. The legal team, young and sharp-eyed, saw the case not only as a pursuit of justice, but as a statement about digital truth, about buried guilt, about what happens when silence is allowed to rot. Ethan did not wait long to respond. He showed up outside her motel room one afternoon, unannounced, standing with the same quiet confidence that had once charmed judges and shareholders alike. His suit was perfect. His eyes, colder than she remembered. You do not want this, he said, not unkindly. You think you do, but it will not give you peace. She met his gaze without blinking. You already took peace. This is something else. You will destroy what is left of this family. No, she said. You did that. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You really think anyone will care what you say after all these years? She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a drive. I do not need them to listen to me. They will listen to this. For a moment, something flickered in his expression. Not fear, not yet, but recognition. That she was no longer the girl he had left behind, that the silence he once hid behind had turned against him. He left without another word. That evening, her parents called. She did not answer. Instead, she sat alone in the motel room, the glow of her laptop casting a thin light across her face. Outside, the town she had once called home went about its quiet, oblivious routines. But under the surface, something had shifted. Documents had been filed. Journalists were asking questions. The press was circling. The silence that had protected Ethan for so long had been breached. And Anya, for the first time in years, was not the one being hunted. She was the one holding the light. The courthouse was smaller than she remembered. The walls were still painted in that same muted beige, the hallway floors polished to a dull reflection. Time had not touched the space much, only the people who now moved through it, many of whom stared at her as she passed, some with recognition, some with shame, others with curiosity sharpened by gossip. Anya walked past them all, spine straight, expression unreadable. She wore no armor but the truth, and that was enough. The judge accepted the motion to reopen the case within days of the evidence being submitted. The files were clean. The signatures on the logs aligned precisely. The fragment of code she had found, Ethan's careless flourish, became the fulcrum around which everything else unraveled. From there, the investigation unearthed a web of falsified access credentials, falsified logs, and one carefully orchestrated scheme to divert blame onto someone who would not be believed. This time, the one who had been believed too easily, Ethan, was forced to stand under a different light. He denied it, of course. At first, he said it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. He claimed the logs had been tampered with, that it was coincidence, that she had doctored the evidence out of revenge, but he was not as good with the truth as he had been with the lie. One by one, the layers came off. Under pressure, cracks appeared in old testimonies. His former co-workers came forward with quiet admissions, small doubts they had ignored at the time. The forensic experts, impartial and meticulous, presented data no argument could dismantle. In the end, it did not matter how smooth Ethan's words were. The code spoke louder. The prosecution moved swiftly. Charges of obstruction, fraud, and malicious data manipulation were brought against him. He was suspended from his firm, then dismissed. His licenses revoked. His name, the one that had once hung on plaques and press releases, was now etched into court documents under a different heading, defendant. Anya never once looked at him during the hearings. She did not need to. Her presence was enough. By the time the media caught on, the story had already taken root. The woman wrongly accused, the family betrayal, the years of exile, the return, the confrontation. It was everything a headline could want. But Anya never gave them more than the facts. No tears on camera, no dramatic declarations. When asked how she had survived, she answered quietly, "I kept going." One magazine profile called her the woman who rose from the ashes of betrayal. Another dubbed her the silent witness who spoke in code. She read none of them. The morning the verdict was read, the courtroom was full. Ethan sat pale and distant, flanked by lawyers who no longer believed in his cause. Her parents were there too, sitting at the back, aged and shaken. Her mother wept when the sentence was handed down. Anya remained still. Outside, cameras waited, lenses aimed like eyes that never blinked. A reporter called her name. "Miss Thompson, do you feel justice was served?" She paused on the steps. "I feel," she said, "that truth has weight, and for the first time it is no longer mine to carry alone." Then she stepped down into the morning light, the world no longer something she needed to escape. They waited for her outside the courthouse 2 days after the sentencing, her parents standing together beneath the bare branches of an old elm tree, looking smaller than she remembered. Her mother held her purse tightly with both hands, as if it might keep her from falling apart. Her father leaned heavier on his cane than he used to, his shoulders bent not just from age but from something deeper, guilt that had settled into his bones. Anya saw them before they saw her. She hesitated. Part of her wanted to turn away, to keep walking and never stop. Another part, the one still shaped like a daughter, stepped forward. Her mother was the first to speak. Her voice trembled. "We saw everything. We heard the testimony. We believed lies, Anya. I believed them, and I cannot take that back." Her father said nothing at first, just reached into his coat pocket and pulled something wrapped in cloth. His hand shook as he unfolded it. A familiar weight nestled in worn velvet. The pocket watch. He held it out to her. "I told you once," he said, his voice hoarse, "that time always holds the truth. But I did not wait for it. I listened to fear instead." He looked up at her, and for a moment she saw not the man who had turned his back on her, but the one who had once knelt beside her as she learned to solder a circuit board, who had spoken to her in metaphors because that was how he made sense of the world. "I failed to follow the very advice I gave you," he said, "and I have lived with that every day." Anya took the watch slowly. It was heavier than she remembered, or perhaps she had simply grown stronger. She did not answer them right away. That night, she sat across from Roy at the cafe they both still visited, though the staff had long since changed. The place felt smaller now, but not in a bad way, like a room you finally saw clearly after years in the dark. "I do not know what to do with them," she said. Roy sipped his coffee, then gave her a long, steady look. "Forgiveness is not a favor," he said. "It is not letting someone off the hook. It is letting yourself stop bleeding from a wound they no longer control." "They left me," she said. "And now they are asking to be let back in," he replied. "You get to decide if the door stays closed. But whatever you do it because it is your choice, not because you are still trying to punish them." She nodded slowly. 2 days later, she met her parents again, this time not on accident, not in passing, but with intention. "I forgive you," she said simply. Her mother gasped, hand over her mouth. Her father closed his eyes as if bracing for something he had not earned. "But I'm not coming back," she added gently. "I have built something new. I cannot live inside a past that broke me." There were tears, soft and unsure, but there was no protest. And when they left, Anya stood alone again, but differently. Not abandoned, not lost, just herself, whole. Still healing, but whole. The city breathed differently. New York pulsed with a rhythm that had no patience for stillness, a place where silence was rare and purpose was worn like a second skin. Anya found comfort in that chaos. It was not forgiveness she sought anymore. It was momentum. And this city, with its endless lights and restless ambition, welcomed her like a current welcomes a swimmer unafraid of deep waters. She rented a small space in an old brick building in the Flatiron District. Nothing grand, just 4 walls, exposed pipes, and a corner window that caught the morning light. She named the firm Veritas, truth in the language of those who once used it as shield and sword. The company began with just her and 2 engineers she had met during freelance work, both outliers like herself, people who understood what it meant to be overlooked, underestimated, written off. Together, they built a service unlike any other: personal digital justice, forensic work for those who had been silenced, data recovery for those whose truths had been buried. Quiet cases at first, then bigger ones. Word traveled. She never advertised, but people found her. Survivors, whistleblowers, families searching for answers no police report could provide. In her office, on a shelf just behind her desk, stood the pocket watch. It did not tick anymore. Roy had once offered to repair it, but she declined. Its silence was part of its story now. She kept it open. The glass cracked slightly, the hands forever frozen at 7:30 a.m., the time her father had first placed it in her hand all those years ago. Some mornings she would glance at it before meetings, as if to remind herself that she had not imagined any of it. The garage, the betrayal, the exile, the return, that all of it had happened, and that she had not only survived it, she had shaped it into something unbreakable. Clients often asked about the watch. "It belonged to someone who taught me that time holds the truth," she would say. And he was right. Eventually it caught up. Sometimes she thought of her parents, still in Oregon, still trying in quiet ways to rebuild something they once let fall apart. She answered their calls now, not always, not quickly, but she answered. Ethan had disappeared from the news cycle, his name slowly eroded by new scandals, louder stories. She heard he was living alone in another state. She did not think of him often. When she did, it was without rage. One evening, long after her staff had left and the office was dim except for the hum of monitors, Anya stood by the window, watching the city breathe. She felt no need to escape, no ache in her chest, no fear of what came next. The truth had once shattered her life. Now it lit her way forward.